Do Nation's vision is that by 2030, it would have motivated and enabled 1 million people to really unblock progress on a truly sustainable future. On a personal level, I just want a world where everyone appreciates the value and wonder of nature and willing to do their bit to protect it.
We are on an adventure to unite the stories and solutions of the pioneers, creating a better future for all. Together, we will journey to every continent, every country and community, and ask the question, what is the future you dream of? We will explore the blockers to us getting there, and we will ask, what will it take? What do we need? What do you need to create a future where we all thrive in balance and harmony with nature and each other?
Hello and welcome to the Future Planet podcast. In this episode, we adventure with Hermione Taylor, the visionary founder and CEO of Do Nation. Hermione is an early pioneer in promoting sustainable actions and living. Her journey began in 2009 with an inspiring cycling trip from London to Morocco, a challenge not just for her, but for those around her. Instead of seeking financial support, Hermione urged her friends and family to commit to sustainable actions. What started as a personal challenge quickly transformed into a global movement. Under Hermione's leadership, Do Nation has collaborated with over 500 organizations in 100 countries. Nearly 60,000 individuals have made pledges, collectively saving an astounding 16,500 tons of CO2 annually. This achievement is equivalent to offsetting over 42,500 flights from London to Morocco, a testament to the power of collective action. And no, that doesn't mean that we can now take those winter holidays without careful thought about our personal carbon budget. In this episode, you will hear Hermione's pioneering journey to empower everyday actions, how COP and CSRD are creating urgency and driving change, and we explore collaboration, when it works, where its edges are, and the opportunities it creates. We also explore how the movement has changed and how with more people joining and creating solutions, which is wonderful, it also creates the need for those of us that have been in it for some time to evolve how we approach things. Listen to the end to hear us explore the very real challenge of money, finance, and allocation of resources to supporting the people and solving the challenges we face, and a curious link to how our approach could be different if we adopted the successes of a pilot project that help people into work. Where shall we go next? What questions shall we ask? To co-create the podcast with us, connect with fellow changemakers in the Future Planet community of action, visit futureplanet.love to sign in or sign up. Let's get into it. It's wonderful to welcome Hermione, the founder of Do Nation, to the Future Planet podcast, a long-term pioneer empowering people to take action on climate, nature, and social, and someone that has worked tirelessly at the edge of pioneering people's behavior change, predominantly in large organizations, but also across different communities as well, helping them to change their behaviors and helping them to play a role in creating a future that we can all love. Hermione, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Very good to be talking with you.
Yeah, very good to talk with you as well. So I feel for those of you that are listening, many of you that will already know Hermione, of course. Hi. Would you give us a bit of context on who you are and what Do Nation is, and perhaps something around the origin story of Do Nation, just to give us a little bit of perspective before we launch into some of a deeper conversation?
Of course, sure. I mean, you've already given us a great intro, so thank you. But yeah, Do Nation, I founded 14 years ago nearly, which is mildly terrifying. We exist to mobilize transformative action for climate and nature. Really founded on the belief that actually people are the key to unblocking the progress that we really urgently need, and that most of the solutions to the climate and ecological crises already exist. And when I realized that, and actually they exist, the solutions are there, the blocker is that people aren't aware of them. People, decision makers, aren't aware of them and their potential. And that's the issue kind of we're trying to help solve. In terms of our story and just a little bit of context as to where we are, started as a platform for people to raise support for events or challenges in their personal lives. I'd cycled to Morocco and asked people to support us through action instead of cash. Scaled that idea into this platform people could use to raise support for marathons, pledges instead of gifts for weddings, other events, cycle rides, whatever it be. All the actions that they kind of raise support through are simple things that individuals can do in their personal lives to have an impact, whether that be cycling to work or eating a bit less meat, switching to an ethical pension provider, planting trees, whole range of actions that people can take to make a difference together. Over time, we've evolved into being more about helping organizations to engage their employees, like their workplace community, in the same actions, using the same concepts, a platform where people can record and share pledges and measure the impact of those pledges is really important to say. For each of these actions, when people kind of pledge to cycle or waste less food, we ask them a few questions, which allows us to measure how much carbon they will save by making this change over a defined period of 2 months, and share that and add that to their kind of the campaign pages total. So while on the surface it seems like it's just about encouraging behavior change, really the motivation behind it has been about a lot more than that. And it was all about actually how those behavior changes can drive attitude shifts and wider adoption of actions. So it's basically starting people on the journey towards greater change, which I can talk a lot more about. I'd love to talk more about that, but I also don't want to overtalk.
I love you. I think one of the things that fascinates me is the arc that we've been on as a movement and the journey that we've been on. I mean, 14 years, a bit longer in terms of actual in the movement than myself, but also I've been part of it for a significantly amount of time. And certainly noticed initially when we were working on behavior change in the built environment with carbon culture a long time ago, like maybe even slightly longer than that, that actually the behavior change piece was not really that prevalent in people's minds. It was all about technical changes and people felt the behaviors would come next. And now we're sort of very acutely aware of the need that it's actually all about the people. It's about mindsets. It's about changing minds. It's about people feeling like they're empowered to make changes. It's about, particularly about this, it's about making the right decisions, the right actions, and at a scale that's relevant enough. And that's what I love about Do Nation is you're sort of looking to mobilize that level of intent at scale.
Yeah. Just to pick up on that, the shift that we've seen over that time is fascinating. So we started working with organizations in 2013, and it was pioneering companies like Innocent Drinks that came to us saying, hey, some of our employees have used this platform in their personal lives. We want to use it at work. And so kind of they came to us, these really purpose-driven organizations saw the value in engaging their employees in action, getting their employees understanding what climate and sustainable living means in their personal lives, because they can bring that then into their work lives. But that wasn't enough to make a viable business. There were very few and far between businesses that really got that. Most of the time when we were going out to companies and like trying to sell our services, the journey we had to go through was a journey of first meeting would be like, okay, here's why climate change matters for your company. And this is why we know that climate change is real, by the way. And then the second meeting would be like, okay, so now you've got that climate change matters to your company. Here's why your employees need to be involved in that. And that was a harder sell. And then once they'd done that, it was like, okay, and here's how Do Nation can help. Whereas now we find, even the biggest global companies who aren't necessarily working in a pioneering, purpose-driven space come to us going, okay, we've set net zero commitments. We've realized that there's no way we can reach them unless our employees are on board. Help us. And it's like, that's so much easier conversation to have.
It is. What we've also noticed is that as that movement has changed and as the awareness has changed quite significantly in the last 2 to 5 years, I think increasingly so each year, it's got many more people are aware about it. Regulatory changes are happening. More people are influenced, more people are interested, more people are energized to act. But I think that's, for us, that's arisen in a reflection of what role we play. Because I think the juxtaposition of that is this acute, sharp growing awareness, consistent growing awareness of just how large the challenge is and just how important making the right actions are. How's that journey been for you of realism around that? And have you changed your approach, or have you changed how you're learning, right, about what's happening at that point in the movement change, in this very fast moving sort of change of the world around us? And you're this very interesting point of learning, particularly around people's behaviors, how to support people to respond based on their evolved understanding of what their response needs to be, and your evolved understanding of what the response needs to do. And it's getting sharper and sharper. What's your take on that?
Ultimately, yeah, we need to help people take the most impactful actions they possibly can. However, whilst getting them there, they need to be taking whatever action is available. One of the things that really, really gets under my skin is when I or like frustrates me is that when I hear people that are going, oh, I'm waiting to find, I'm doing loads of research on what the most impactful thing I can possibly do is, and then I'll change my career and I'm going to go and radically like move into a whole different space to tackle whichever industry is going to be most impactful and where that silver bullet is. I'm researching that, and then I'll shift into from whatever like quite high impact, negative impact job they may currently be in. And actually, the most impactful action we can take is the action we can take now, because the clock is ticking, and delaying by months to try and find that perfect action. I'm not sure that those perfect actions really exist. Just start doing something now, but keep progressing.
That sounds true, but I think that start now thing, as even in the last like year or two, has changed. So 3 years ago, start now was probably, can we take plastic straws out of the canteens? And even though people were saying, oh, let's change to clean energy or whatever, or those different areas. And now the start now, I think, is quite different in terms of like both the context around it and the actions that we think people could take and their awareness of the actions. We like tree planting is another example where the start now has probably changed, I think, even in the last year or two.
Possibly within certain circles. I think there's still a lot of people that think using a reusable straw is them doing their bit, and that's not enough. Doesn't mean to say we shouldn't encourage people to do it if it's the first step on a journey. And this is where, and I mean, we're talking now on the personal actions, but then also on the professional actions. I see so many people that want to shift career into sustainability, and that's great. But also, we need every job to become a climate job. We don't just need an army of sustainability consultancies. Yeah, we need everyone to be thinking about climate and sustainability, whether they're a lawyer or an engineer, product designer, cleaner, they all need to be on board. And that's the big thing that we're aiming to work towards, and ultimately join the dots between those first steps, whether it be, I mean, we don't have an action about using a reusable straw actually, because I do think that is probably a distraction, but a reusable water bottle through to shifting like to upskilling and moving into climate work, joining the dots between those actions so that people move from that first step of personal action on towards professional action.
Yeah, that journey makes a lot of sense. And I guess you're then bringing the experience of how to help someone move through those gears in a smooth way, in the same way that you do. What's the cycling thing that you do again? What's that called?
Ride the Change, happening in April for Earth Day.
Right. If you haven't signed up for Ride the Change, it's happening in April for Earth Day, then you should sign up now.
Tickets on sale now.
Tickets on sale now. But in the same way that you help people move smoothly through the gears on that, like I think then your awareness around, okay, great, well, it's easy to start here, but then these things come next. I think that level of experience, that sort of being a Sherpa or a guide, feels like a valuable thing for people to receive, right?
Totally. And this is exactly where we're at the moment. Donations we haven't been delivering on that well enough. We've seen it happening anecdotally, and it is, the very virtue of people engaging in a community of people taking positive actions. They start to have conversations about the importance of these actions, about the challenges and barriers they're facing. That leads to kind of them realizing their opportunities, maybe in their day job. Maybe there's some amazing examples of change it's led to, innovations it's led to within companies, new policies it's kind of kickstarted. But I don't think we're quite proactive enough at that, either at driving it or at measuring it. Because it's happening anecdotally, we don't have a way to really track how well it's happening, how often, and where to push the dial, where to push hardest. So that's what we're looking to change over the coming months and years. It's not going to happen quickly, but we're starting on now is really building into the user journey a much longer pathway. The moment, because of where Donation started as a one-off campaign tool, as I started talking about earlier, it's had quite a defined life cycle, and users, they make their pledge, they get a load of support over 2 months, they confirmed how they got on, and then we leave them, which we absolutely shouldn't be leaving them at that point. At that point, they're like looking back going, I've achieved change. I've done something worthwhile. Wow, and there's so much more I could do. Help me do more. And we're really well placed to do that. And ultimately, we've got, having been around for so long, we've got an amazing network of organizations in the space who I think we're well established at knowing, right, who are the players in all of the different areas that can help people on that journey. We don't plan to take them there ourselves. It's all through collaboration. So we've got that. We have data on the behaviors people have been interested in changing, the industries they work in, their departments, even their like geographical region. So we've got all this data that we could use to feed them really personalized kind of change pathways, really targeted, personalized actions that they can do to make the most difference. Sneak peek into what's coming.
Yeah, nice. That is exciting. And I love that, part of this is like, are you still doing it? Because it's really difficult to sail a ship, which, if we imagine as a business, to sail a small ship in very stormy seas and through all these evolutions and changes. But I think that experience, that knowledge, that awareness, that having been both not only curious, but proactive within the space of behavior change and people's habits and actions, gives you a tremendous well and depth of knowledge. Even if now you're saying, actually, we know this much and we really want to be better at these different things. I think perfect, right? Like, great. Like, we should all be thinking about how we can transform our organizations in the same kind of way, right? We've got this far. We've realized we need to make a few changes. We've got all this knowledge and experience. Here's what we're excited about doing next. I think that's phenomenal. And I would say, in terms of if anyone's working in an organization, all of us need to be looking at the way we're doing things and reflecting on how well they're going and improving them, not only because we can have a greater impact, but also because that's exciting and gives us more energy. And I feel like that the more energy thing is so fundamental for us being able to keep doing the thing that we're doing. And for me, what we find with us is my whole body feels energetically aligned when we're energetically aligned with what we should be doing. Like, I can feel it. And I can feel resistance inside me when we're not energetically aligned. And so part of being able to do it for 14 years, like you've been doing, is that energy and that excitement. And that's part of it's being on knowing that you're doing the most impactful thing that you can be doing.
Totally. To me, one of the things that really motivates me is knowing that the world needs what we're doing because no one else is doing it. When times were really tough, I was like, but we have to do this because we've got customers that really value our service and there's no one else to step in. So we'll find a way to make it happen. Now there are, because the interest, and the world of climate action is growing, which is brilliant. But it also means there are lots of other competitors. There are lots of alternatives now. The difference in conversation we have is, every client that comes to us is looking at a few other alternatives too. And in many ways, they're doing very similar things to us. There's very little difference. And if I just went, this is hard, I'm going to let them do the hard work instead. Knowing that can happen doesn't give me energy. But where we're wanting to go in taking people to professional action, away from leading them from personal action onto professional action much more purposefully, isn't something anyone else is doing. So that really brings me the energy to keep going. Yeah. So it's like we've only found that niche recently, and that's good.
That's perfect. And I love that, like, searching for the niche as you get new information. We've definitely done the same. And I love your open collaborative approach. And it makes me also think of a fellow community member, Emilian, at Climate Partner, and what they've done with Planet Mark and Andrew Griffith, and where with a number of other carbon accounting providers, where that space has just grown massively, probably much more competitive even than behavior change. And then they're looking at how they can collaborate more effectively together, because this is not a individual effort. This is a team sport, even if sometimes we feel like, oh, it's a bit edge, they're competing with us. Actually, no, we're all, like, curiously, the people that we compete with are the people that we perhaps love the most because they're passionate about the same things. And there are so many relationships we all need to build to make this work that it's okay. I think it's totally okay. And you just need to figure out where you need to be in the movement. Totally.
I think the collaboration challenges or opportunity is a really interesting one. The challenge of collaboration, it's also a big opportunity, but getting it right. We were part of a big collaboration between our direct competitors, all kind of pooling our knowledge to help improve the sector. But ultimately, we were direct competitors. Love all the people involved, but there was a challenging element that we're like, we're putting a lot of time into this. And then there's this kind of energy, the emotional energy of thinking about what it's for, but the direct benefit in that instance wasn't really obvious. I think in the Planet Mark example, there is a clear goal. They're setting a standard and clarifying, what carbon accounting. You might know more about it than I do, actually. Ultimately, what I've learned about the collaboration is that everyone needs to be completely transparent about what their incentives are, what their motivations for being part of it are, what for them success in that collaboration will be. And if they're not completely aligned, then it's probably not going to work. And it's okay to admit, sometimes this isn't going to work. I feel like I focused on a negative tone there, which I didn't mean to, because then there are examples where there is perfect alignment, and we've got a few of those going on at the moment, and it just feels really good.
Well, okay, so I'd love to hear about those. I also feel like the next connection for me on, if we're summarizing around what collaboration is in our world, what I've learned is that, you and I are collaborating now. We're collaborating in a general sense with everyone else that cares about the world being a better place. And it's a bit like, for me, the distance of love that you can hold your relationships, the same as your personal relationships. Like, we're collaborating with other event organizers. We don't really run events, but we're collaborating with other event organizers in our mission to inspire, empower, energize, inform, share knowledge. We don't need to work with them to be in collaboration in that way. We can be informed by them. We can inspire each other. And then there might be other people that we're collaborating with to do deeper work. So if we're doing something programmatically or something on a focused particular challenge, we're also collaborating with people if we don't do something that they're doing, because we're giving them space to let them do the thing that we think that they should be doing. And I love when I see people doing something that I don't have to do. I'm like, brilliant. They're doing it. I don't have to now do that thing. So I think it's curious collaboration. I don't think it always needs to be, it's looking at through the lens of like, we're doing something with someone. It could be we're choosing not to do something with someone. Yeah, it's really interesting. What are some successful collaborations that you are currently working on? Or what are some successful collaborations that are in your awareness right now?
Yeah, it's really early stages but we're talking with a great organization called Aim High Earth. They do brilliant climate training for workplaces, like video-based, very engaging session. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. They're great.
I was about to say climate literacy. They're similar, but different. So really engaging training for workplaces. We engage workplaces in action. They run their training sessions within companies, and their employees are then left saying, so what do we do? This is amazing. I'm inspired. I'm motivated, but what action can I take? Obviously, we can come in there and go, here's some actions. Likewise, when companies run donation programs, they're like, okay, we need, alongside encouraging our employees to take action, we need to actually just engage them in the issue more broadly. Here's some amazing engagement programs. So working with them is just proving to be really good fun.
Yeah, they are so awesome. That's such an awesome collaboration, because we hear that a lot. People like, what next after we're awakened? I think it's a real challenge for sustainability professionals to then keep the momentum up of the kind of this intent that people have. They're switched on and they're like, where are we going to go? Where are we going to go? So I think that's perfect for you to arrive. That's a wonderful collaboration. Oh, nice. Yeah, I love it.
And I'm looking forward to building out way more of those. And with the likes of you, Future Planet, so many people are doing good things in this space. I always saw donation as a platform for raising the profile of the solutions. We're not providing any of the solutions ourselves. We're just directing people to them. And at first that was like the solutions for cycling to work, where to get your bike, how to sign up to the Cycles Work scheme. But now we need to move people into that professional space, upskilling them, connecting them to their community, helping them, guide them towards systems thinking, whatever it may be for that person. And there's so much opportunity for collaboration there because people are providing slightly different services. Whereas when we were working with our direct competitors and trying to, this project was very involved collaboration. It was hours a week of sharing our sales tactics, and it's like a little bit uncomfortable. Sharing our pricing models. That's like, no, that was too radical.
Yeah, that's too edge.
That's why I feel like I should clarify why I was a bit outspoken in questioning the comfort zone we were in within that group quite often. And maybe because we were the leaders. Anyway, lots to learn from that, reflect on another time. But great group of people who I love spending time with. But there's an edge that is possibly too far.
Yeah, I think that's a curious dance between commercial and altruistic. And that's curious to explore for us, because one of our things is to be like, hey, people from large enterprise organizations, why don't you collaborate more? And then so to understand, perhaps for them, it's even in a different role that they would be feeling that feeling, but that different role is not engaged in that way. But you can see why feel why, like there's some sort of friction around collaboration, because it is strange, isn't it? That sort of competitive advantage, commercial ability to hold the business and the things that you've built, and also this shared sort of threat and opportunity that climate change and nature and social challenges present with us. It's compelling.
Yeah, ultimately, we do need radical collaboration, I think, to get people, we need to do things differently. And so I kind of embrace being right at the edges. I think I've just learned a lot from it about, right, where should we push? It's that point of really being very clear, getting everyone to be very clear on what is in it for them. in the long term, or is it a short term thing? And then I think as long as everyone's transparent, then you can create great things.
Well, there probably is things being too transparent, but I think for us, we've learned authentically sharing, but in a safe space so that you can do that is definitely the way through some of these quite tricky challenges. Because what we're really asking, you're right, we're really asking everyone to transform almost everything, everywhere, all at once. So it'd be really lovely to hear like what your vision for, what are we aiming for? I think it's helpful to know. And then what are we seeing as some of the challenges or blockers to us getting there? And where do we think some of the opportunities or solutions lie within that framing?
So, I mean, Do Nation's vision is that by 2030, it would have motivated and enabled 1 million people to really unblock progress on a truly sustainable future. It's all about the unblocking people, helping people to unblock progress, Ultimately, I think, like on a personal level, I just want a world where everyone appreciates the value and wonder of nature and willing to do their bit to protect it. I'm loving the talk of nature coming into this narrative more, because I think that's the thing that gets people so excited. Climate's just quite dry. It's so interlinked. It's not one or the other. And actually, when people get out into nature and appreciate it, it's so much easier to then take them on the journey to doing their bit to protect it.
Well, we are nature. So that's why it feels good to be in it, because we are. Yeah, what a lovely vision. And
love that way of looking at it.
I love the vision as well. And I love the ambition, although I feel like you're definitely capable of achieving more, but that's just me. Or whether there's some level of intentionality around who that 1 million people is, because I'm so curious about that bit. We don't need everyone. Like, we just need the most influential key people within organizations to then influence others. And I said, I'm curious around the intentionality around that community and who is connected with, but perhaps for another time. What are some of the challenges that you're seeing around behavior change, and what might some of your blockers be towards achieving those goals?
I think there are several, and at different levels. There's a fundamental challenge of people believing that it's actually always down to someone else. It's down to government, it's down to technology, it's down to other businesses. But all of those things are made up of us people. So it's really people are at the heart of everything. Shifting that belief is happening, as you said earlier. It's definitely beginning to happen. So that's good. Another is the age-old problem around climate. And even though it's becoming more urgent, there is ultimately a lack of urgency. If there wasn't, I think we wouldn't be in the state we're in as a planet. There are always more urgent issues for organizations to tackle than engaging their employees in climate. And they've got to find the right time. And the number of times that we sign up organizations and then they delay their launch by 6 months because they've got some other strategic priority. And we don't have this time to be playing with. So that's a real challenge. And it was interesting how when COP26 was in Glasgow, we saw that totally change. The fact that such a huge global event was happening here in the UK meant that all organizations that we were talking to were suddenly like, we need to launch something for COP. Like, this is a strategic priority. We need to show our employees. They're asking what we're going to do, launch now. And we were mad busy in the build up to that with, I've never seen companies move so quickly at signing off programs. And it was great. And then since then, there's still just as much interest. There's growing interest, but the urgency has gone. So even though we all know as individuals that climate, like the urgency of the issue at large is really apparent. We've had the hottest year on record, like by significantly, it's very clear that the urgency is ramping up. But actually day to day in people's jobs, that's not felt.
It's hard. Yeah. Well, that's such a curious challenge. Like the challenge of budget cycles, the challenge of people having enough time within the day job, people having permission within the day job, people having enough time in their lives outside of the most immediate sort of, can I survive the week? Can I deliver the things that I've got to deliver? I think that conflicting timepiece and lack of urgency, even though there's awareness, is perhaps one of the biggest challenges across everything. What we're seeing is where regulatory changes are being made, where responsibility is now being held with leaders in organizations, then there's this sort of, we need to act now. And that's becoming more immediate. But with these slightly more optional things, we're not seeing so much urgency. But I wonder if we could move through the gears more quickly. I think certainly at Future Planet, we know that you can. And it's perhaps similar to your world, but for us, it's around social capital, understanding internal frameworks, understanding how to support those change makers to get change to happen. understanding the rhythm and flow of engagement and moving through the process of getting people to join something, connecting the dots internally in organizations in an intentional way so that you can help move through some of those perhaps challenges that you might find in getting something to go forward. But that's hard work. And I wonder how to solve the urgency thing as well, because we won't have a COP every year. And often each year you've got so many other things. And a certain fatigue comes with having to be on high alert every moment. That's, I think, another challenge, isn't it? Like, could we do 7 years of emergency? I wonder if we could. It sort of becomes something that just sort of fits. You get accustomed to it, and then you're like, oh, it's not so urgent anymore. So that's curious.
Yeah. Well, I think you mentioned the regulation like CSRD and things. I think that will help to bring in the urgency, because when you think about it, financial accounting has to be done quarterly or annually at least. And that people aren't on high alert around it all the time. It just becomes part of business as usual. Climate has lacked that because it hasn't been for many businesses. Obviously, for larger businesses, there's been regulatory requirements for a while. But I think this increasing regulation will make businesses realize, okay, we need to keep on top of this. And the way to keep on top of it isn't just to hire a sustainability manager to do it all. That is great progress. A lot of organizations now have sustainability roles, but they can't do it all. Yeah, they need the entire workforce to come on board. And I think that will become more apparent to more organizations. It'll become inevitable, really.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think the business as usual bit is really interesting, because then it becomes part of what's got to be done. The other element that really struck with me with what you're saying is, if we imagine, again, organizations where they're looking to engage people that work within them or are in those communities of those organizations around climate, nature, social themes, then having a way that they can be present in part of that is beneficial. But also that then what we're now starting to see is the link between green skills and the attractiveness of organizations to work in, for them to be having these types of programs. And what I'm also noticing is the need for consistency in them as well. Otherwise, it's quite hard to keep manifesting the energy required for these moments in time in organizational communities. And so there's something like Do Nation, where there's a sort of sense of individuality, but also a consistency of commitment and community around what you're doing. Feels like it's a way of keeping people ever present and ever aware, but also feeling some level of success and achievement, which feels helpful to remove and reduce the anxious energy that comes with the need to act. And in doing that, then you're creating a sort of a way of being that feels like an openness for then perhaps starting to solve other more systemic challenges, which are not necessarily a priority, but could have a larger impact as well, or would have a larger impact.
Oh, you said that very nicely. I see with the employee piece, I often liken it to the digital transformation, which has largely been achieved, right? Companies that haven't successfully have probably struggled or gone out of business, which is, I think, going to be the same with sustainability. If businesses don't have a full green transformation, then they're going to struggle. But the digital transformation wasn't achieved by IT departments on their own. It was achieved by enabling the voice of tech-savvy individuals to kind of experiment and test out new tech tools within their teams or within their day job. Then it's spreading. And it needs to be the same on climate. It can't be just down to sustainability teams. Everyone needs to be part of it. And everyone wants to be part of it. And as you were saying, in order to recruit and attract good talent now, you have to be showing that there are opportunities here. Kite Insights report that I quote endlessly, so powerful. 8 out of 10 employees they saw want to do more on climate in their day jobs, not just in their lives, but within their jobs. 8 out of 10. But most of them have no idea where to start. It's like there's this huge missed opportunity there. People want to take action. Companies want them to take action, but somehow those dots aren't being joined. And that's what we're trying to solve.
I'm sort of fascinated by wasted energy. And my thing is that, or one of my things is, through connection, we can help create more flow. Because what we need is every organization to be motivated in that way, or not every organization. What is required is every individual within the communities that within these organizations or surrounding these, or that are close to these organizations, to be engaged in these ways. Then the next level for me is like, how do you start to then shape that to be the most effective actions that you can take? Because whilst I agree it's important to start on the steps, actually there are some steps that have more value than others, right? And I'm very curious about that mix there. Like, how do you quickly create flow, quickly create engagement, and then quickly create movements where people are, for example, changing to clean energy or working to retrofit their homes so that they can support other organizations. And what we're seeing is interesting connections in the scope 3 of larger organizations and how interconnected that they all are. But actually, if you're a citizen who may also be sometimes seen as a consumer, but predominantly you're a citizen, then your world is quite interconnected as well. Like you might buy a chocolate bar, you're heating your home, you're running your water, you're traveling to work. All of these different things are within the scope 3 of other organizations. And so that's curious to me. Like, what then would be the highest actions, and what could then be the collaborative effect of working across a number of different organizations? Because one of the challenges that we see in that world is around communications. And in a world where communications are so prevalent for everyone, and not everyone, every organization and many people are asking for attention and often shouting for attention and taking up attention. Actually, the ability to cut through and say, actually, could you just change your energy to clean energy this week, please? Whilst you're also having everything else around everything else that you're being shared. That's an interesting thing. And if you're an organization, if you're wanting to communicate about things that are happening in 5 or 7 years and maybe a bit opaque, like net zero, then what I'm interested in is, as a citizen, is like, how am I going to pay my bills this month? And can you help me to do that? Or how am I going to feed my children? Or how am I going to get to work? Or there's a number of other things that may come up higher than am I thinking about 1.5 degrees? And there's something in the collaborative way that we are aware of that. And then the intentional way that we build collaborations so that we can make it easier for people to make individual and collective actions, rather than it just being siloed on organization by organization, which is like, oh, one organization said this would be a great thing to do. Fine, great, perfect, excellent. Let's engage your workforce and let's make that change. But actually the mapping exercise that goes into understanding the supply chains and the communities, I think complements the other mapping exercises, which is which actions you can take. And I'm very curious about that, because I think that intentional connection can create better flow and result in more impactful actions. And so to talk a little bit more about it, like if you were to imagine a county and the citizens that were within a county and the different organizations that were within that county and the different councils, collaborating on that level would then allow you to engage similar people that were part of the same families or the same schools or the same home environments and similar organizations. Then I think you're starting to be able to create something that's got a higher energy for change, rather than these sort of slightly separate and well-meaning pieces of change happening. That was a lot, actually. I had to get that off my chest. I realized I had to get that off my chest.
That's great.
Yeah, it's a piece of the puzzle we're finding. Like, intentional community building is a piece of the puzzle.
Yeah. And you're doing great work.
I don't think we're doing enough. It's so frustrating. I don't think we're doing enough. Like, I'm so frustrated by it.
Oh yeah, I know that frustration. But we've got to be kind to ourselves, because we're doing our best. And where we want to move to is, which I'm excited about, the space, the flow, taking people on that journey and understanding ultimately there is not one size fits all, because everyone's lives are so unique and so different, and the opportunities they have in their work world and the challenges they have in their personal life and their family life, or the opportunities there, like they're all everyone's different. But nowadays, with terrifying but incredible tools like AI at our disposal, that is kind of overcomable. And I think our plan to kind of take people, use the data we have on where people are at, not overly personal, like not scary levels of data, relatively high level. But if someone, for example, if someone is in the engineering team, in the software team at a consultancy, and they pledge to switch to a renewable energy provider, let's share content with them about switching their websites to green web hosts. That could have an even bigger impact. We know that they're in a position to do something about that, or at least connected to those that are. How about sharing information about green software design courses or books or resources? Because that's something where they could learn and have personal benefit from, with a huge impact as well. So kind of mapping out, as you talk, these journeys, doesn't actually have to be done so manually now. I think that's quite exciting. I think it can be done at real scale.
Yeah, I'm very excited by that. And I've been very disappointed by the lack of ingenuity that's come out around AI on one side of the focus of it. On the other side, I think it's been very interesting. And I think there's so much to be done. And I think the opportunity is really curious around how we could work with AI within the movement of what we're working on. And we're seeing it, of course. I'm not detracting from the great work that people are using AI for. It's just frustrating that we have to be, it feels like a second class movement for the AI for good versus AI for like making marketing slightly faster, which is personal frustration.
I think it takes time to think about it and get your head around it and understand the opportunities, and it's moving so fast. And typically the feel good space is, we're all more, I would say would you say it's fair to say that we're probably a bit more stretched than on average?
I think we're more stretched. I think one of the challenges we have is we're also more humble, and we're also probably spend a little bit more time like questioning whether what we're doing is okay and whether we can do, and it's harder to build a solution where you're thinking about like all the other different data points. Like I think it's pretty easy to build a solution where you're just thinking about money, like, cause it's not that hard. Like not saying that I've ever done that really, really well. It's not been that interesting to me, but I think if you're thinking about it wider than that, and you're thinking about how do we collaborate with our competitors, that's not what people are thinking about when they're thinking about how to scale something that just makes money as much, I think. They're thinking about how to beat their competitors, how to be the best, how to be the simplest, how to be the quickest, the fastest, make the most money. And I think it's a different set of problems that we face. And we're also very humble as a general rule, people in the community of for good. And I also don't feel like we need solutions that are going to be scaled like that. I think you and I, the challenges that you and I have talked about around fundraising and the level of access of suitable fund people to provide funds for people that are thinking about building organizations differently, like that's also an evolving space. So I think there's many challenges that are presented to us, but I love the idea of the way we would look at data and collaboration around data. If we bring that back to what you were sharing, I think that's very curious. What you're suggesting there is a non-linear approach to sharing and collaborating, particularly around data. And I think that's interesting. I think that's fascinating what you could achieve there.
Well, I think it could make a huge difference. I'm very excited about it. But you talk about investing like that. That's the other challenge. When you asked me about challenges earlier, I was like, people's belief that they can be part of this solution, it's the urgency and it's the money.
Yeah.
And we all need more money. I know that's not unique to this industry. And actually the climate tech space has like grown in terms of angel and VC funding. It's grown faster than any others, and it's done better it's declined less rapidly than other sectors over the last year or two, but funding is tight everywhere at the moment. And if we're going to achieve the change that we need to, and we want to, at the pace that we need, then we can't do it bootstrapped. That's something I've really learned. Whilst I really love the idea of growing a business organically, actually, climate change is not waiting for organic growth. So hoping to change that shortly.
No, I think you will. I'm very confident that you will. And I love the work that Esme Verity is doing as well around alternative capital, ways of finding alternative capital. I think it's fantastic. You and I connected through that as well. We've known each other for a lot longer than that, but we both were on that course. But I think there is a lack across every place that capital is required. So it could be loss and damage fund. It could be budgets available in large organizations. It could be availability of money for innovation. It could be availability of money for people scaling through the gears. And not just money that wants a return. It's availability of like, we just need to fund this because we're facing an existential crisis. So let's find the money from somewhere. It's not there's a lack of money in the system. There's just a lack of money in the right points in the system. And it's such a challenge that I think all of us face where, I don't know, there was a study I think I read in a book before where the way that they solved homelessness was they'd done all these different challenges. Like they'd given them money if they did something. They had all these rules around how to give them money, and none of those things were effective. They had to, one of them was they had to go into it was maybe a job center or something like that, and they had to they had to prove that they've been trying to get work, et cetera, et cetera. When it worked, when the pilot study worked, was when they said, we're just going to give you £3,000 and trust that you know what to do with it. And the results of that trust and the feeling of that trust being given to those people was phenomenal. I think they had much greater success rate. I probably should know the stats, but I don't. But I know the way it was solved was that way. And I feel like for us in the climate movement, sort of just need to throw a lot of money at the problem. And certainly the closer you get to it being a big challenge, the more you need to just make that money accessible. Because if you think about the budget cycles shifting, you think about all of these different areas. And particularly, I think for me, you want unrestricted capital. You sort of just want to be like, let's just do it and let's figure out whether it's working on the way, or some things are going to be proven to work. Great, excellent. Let's do it that way. For us, one of the challenges has been if you raise money, you have to then do the thing that you'd raise money for. But you can't always respond well to a challenge if that's the case, because maybe in a year's time, it will be very different. Maybe in 2 years' time, it will be very different. And you'll end up with building the wrong types of solutions. So I think there's so much challenge that I feel like there's a greater need for more connection with people with large pots of money, more like, so I would consider governments to be in that space, philanthropists to be in that space, foundations to be in that space, and more unrestricted capital or more money available to the different people that need it. And another one that we've seen as well, and I'm just riffing now, but this is just, we see so many of these challenges. You need them in businesses as well. You need these sort of, I think you need almost like fighting funds in businesses where they're not even being asked about the money. They just have the money to spend. They need it. Because the challenges that it takes for sustainability professionals to get the money to do the thing is huge and unnecessarily large. Like it's such a friction point for them.
It's huge. It's also the payback time is going to be different. And I think that's what it's not just the amount, it's the cycles, that the time frame of return on investment that often will be longer. And because ultimately we need to shift our economy to a place of thinking about longer term returns rather than everything being so short term. For many years, climate work was seen as a little bit scrappy and hippie, like this needs to be professional and really effective. And in order to do that, we need some proper money. And I think there's a real opportunity there. And I think the world is like the appetite for this is really changing. And the fact that there are so many organizations out there now doing great, exciting work, whether it be the Aim High Earth, the Carbon Literacy, Climate Fresh, Future Planet, there's so many organizations creating the opportunities for upskilling. And then also in niche areas, training lawyers in how to incorporate environmental clauses into their contracts, or web engineers how to code in a more low carbon way. And there's so much going on that's really exciting, but it's also really overwhelming, and it means that people are left going, there's so much to do, I don't know where to start.
I fully feel that's so exciting. I think one of the themes that you and I have talked about through this podcast has also been around intentional collaboration. And you mentioned funding that's required, and I agree with you completely. And I also feel like there's the need to be much, as a movement and as a group of people within that movement, to be much more joined up, much more intentionally collaborative.
Exactly.
Much more open, working out where we can be.
Absolutely. So that's where the collaboration is very natural. That's where mapping out all of these players that all serve a slightly different niche within the map and within the ecosystem is, I think that's really exciting, and is what we're beginning to build on top of Do Nation.
Well, I love that. So my invitation to you, the listener, is to join us in that process of doing that. It's those intentional mapping exercises that form part of the shared collaborative piece, which is how we solve this well. And so there's a couple of maps that we should build together in order to help us to flow more effectively. Those maps might be ones around similar ones that Do Nation are working on, what Hermione is working on. There are also other maps around nature-based solutions, regenerative communities, climate-based solutions. But there's also the maps of the individuals within organizations that are looking to make that change happen. There's the piece about mapping out funders so they know where to solve the solutions, and all those other elements as well. And I'm not sure that's happened well enough yet. I think that's still happening in pockets. And so the invitation for you, the listener, but also for anyone that wants to get involved, is I feel like that's going to be the first part of our next year, is to figure out what those maps are and to help us to flow as more effectively as a community. And I'd love to collaborate with you on that as well.
I think that's great that if we're building similar databases, we should collaborate on that.
That's fantastic, Hermione. We've adventured through systems change. We've adventured through our personal stories, through where we see different parts, which are challenges, but also how to overcome them. And also, of course, we've talked about Do Nation and the great work that you do to empower people to make a change. I'd love to welcome you to share some final words.
It's been a really interesting conversation reflecting on the big systems level change that's needed, as well as the small, more practical steps. But what it comes down to is everyone listening, I think, likely to be sustainability professionals or people involved in the space in one way. It's not just down to us. We need to get everyone on board and taking action. Your whole workforce upskilled and equipped with the skills and motivation to help deliver on your net zero targets, on your nature-based targets. They want to do that. 8 out of 10 employees want to do that. Help them. I would love to talk to any organizations that are in that space of wondering how they can engage their employees more actively and really mobilize them for change.
And you have my entire faith and confidence in your doing of that, Hermione. Wonderful. Thank you for joining us. And I look forward to continued adventures and journeys with you into a future where we can all thrive.
Thanks.
Please like, rate and share this widely on your social channels. The more people that we can welcome to join us on the journey and support the change makers we champion, the faster we can combat climate change, battle biodiversity loss, and co-create a future we can all love.
Where do we go next? What questions did this spark for you? Would you like to know more about a particular topic? Who shall we adventure to? What shall we ask them? Where shall we go? What shall we build? How shall we do this together? Do you have any questions or comments? Join the Future Planet community of action at futureplanet.love to sign in, sign up, and get involved. Together, we can.